Welcome to the May edition of Historified. I'm Annie.
I'm Jamie.
And this month we are going to be talking about Military Appreciation Month.
Yes, it is.
So we're going to focus on the men and women who served our country throughout the years that were from McKinney.
And it's going to be hard because there's so many that have served in each of the conflicts since McKinney's been around.
Yes. So let's start first with we know that we do have families that go back to the American Revolution. We have families, I know that the Mrs. Wilmot's father and grandfather both fought in the American Revolution, and they actually fought on different sides. So that was very interesting to me. So obviously McKinney wasn't founded during the American Revolution, but we have families that we know that are linked all the way back to the American Revolution. But since McKinney's founding, one of the bigger wars that we know about is obviously the Civil War.
Right.
So Jamie, I know that there are representatives from the Civil War within that we know the families of Chestnut Square.
Yes.
So who were some of those families?
I feel like of the older structures that we have at Chestnut Square, every one of those families was involved in not just with the war itself, but fighting in the war, right? So we know that the Fairs,
Jack Fairs
is a veteran. And so we know, of course, there's family members from the Fairs family, the Wilmots as well. They had quite a few sons that served.
Yes, I think, and even some of them might have passed away. I know one definitely did pass away serving in the Civil War.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Wilmoth even went to the Civil War.
I'm pretty sure that he did. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all the men in the Wilmoth homestead were gone.
Yes, and so that's where Mr. Wilmoth gave over and entrusted his women and children to a trusted slave,
Enslaved
person, and his name was Chamberlain. He was part of the family, actually, and his wife actually helped raise one of the Wilmoth grandchildren that the Wilmoths raised. And so he stayed behind, and he protected the family.
I know for the Taylors, I'm not sure if any of them served, but I know we have an interesting rumor of what happened during the Civil War time with the Taylor family.
Yes. That was when a Union soldier actually came by the Taylor house, and Mrs. Taylor had a baby in her arms, and she also had one on that was kind of holding on to her skirt, and he was going to rob them and kill them, but he saw the children and he decided not to.
Okay, and she had a gun, didn't she?
She did have a gun.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's actually rumored to be a Civil War soldier peeking out of the window.
Yes, the upstairs of the
Taylor Inn.
I've never seen it, but
I've never seen it, but people have said that they've seen it.
Right, that is a rumor, just like we can't clarify that story is true of the Taylors, but it's one that's been passed down for generations.
Yes. Yeah.
So we can't say it's true, but we're not going to dispute it either.
No.
A lot of things back then are just word of mouth.
Yeah.
Now, and then of course we have the Delaney's, and which Dr. Delaney was a Civil War surgeon, so we know he served as well.
He did.
And
he was actually, I found in a newspaper his pardon from, was it Andrew Johnson? Did he pardon?
I believe it would have been Andrew Johnson.
Yeah. So I found his pardon for serving, because obviously he served on the Confederate side.
Right.
But I found his pardon from Andrew Johnson.
Okay.
Of doing that. And then we have Captain Johnson from the Johnson House. He served in the Civil War as well.
Right. And so, and I think that any family back then, chances are you're going to serve. And that happened with a lot of the conflicts since the Civil War.
Yeah.
that you just were called to serve.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we know that of the Civil War. The Brimmers, we know, had at least relations of some sort for World War I,
Yes. Yeah.
because we found the letters.
We did find letters. We found pictures. We have several Brimmer pictures. We found when Billy Sue Anderson, when we got all of her memorabilia, I did find, and we found as we were going through, several pictures of men in uniform
Right.
from World War I.
And we admit, we're like, oh, who's this?
Right, and so that would have been when it was either from the Anderson family or from the Brimmer side of the family. Yeah.
So, and of course, that store was built during the conflict of World
Yes.
War I. And we had a lot of gentlemen serve, right? Women couldn't serve at that time. You could be a nurse,
Right.
but it was the Red Cross was around, but that was really the only role that women
Right.
were really able to carry when doing anything with a war conflict.
Right.
It was the only way for them to be at the front lines was as a nurse.
But we do have a very famous McKinney woman who helped start the American Red Cross here in McKinney, and that was Bess Hurd. And so we've got a lot of her history. She was an amazing woman. I wish that I would have been able to meet her.
Right?
She just everything that she did. And she's going to come up in later podcasts and in later history that we have.
I think she'll probably always come back.
Yes.
Just because of all the amazing things that she did, right?
Yes.
And was a part of. And so, yeah, I see Bess Hurd's name never not disappearing
Right.
from our podcast.
Yeah, she's always going to come up in something. But she served in both wars. She was intricate part of both wars here on the home front.
So, and McKinney would have done a lot like that during World War I, right? They would have had a Red Cross station, ways to donate. So, it really was a big event in American history, but not quite as big as the Civil War. I'm not saying it's not as important,
Right.
but just maybe not as impacted as the Civil War, and also not as impacted as World War II.
Right. We do have more history that we have found about World War II, and then we also some of the people went over for the Spanish-American War.
Yes.
We found
We
have some history of them as well, but we are very lucky in that we do have General Warden. His collection of uniforms were donated to us.
Right.
And his career is long.
Right. It spans from the late 1800s through just after World War II. And we had that really great, and it'll come back around, just
Yes.
follow us when
Yes.
it comes back around. But we have a really great military exhibit that was so expansive.
Yes, we had to do it four homes. Yeah, it was amazing.
So we had covered the Civil War and the Spanish-American War,
Yes.
what we could find in our collections. We also covered World War I, World War II, and then, but we also just had General Warden's
Yes.
pieces all in
All
one.
over, yeah.
All in the cottage.
Yes, yeah,
And that was quite a sight to see.
yes.
And and it's just something that we're going to be having on rotation. And so it was a lot of work to bring out. Do you
Yes,
remember
it
how
was.
much work it was?
Oh my gosh, that was.
It was so much work. And we had to bring in experts on helping us
Yes, identify
certain things of the uniform
Right.
and how things should be displayed correctly and properly. There are protocols when you're doing anything with those who served on how you either have an event, of how you address them, of how you display their pieces. There's a lot of respect, right, for those who have served for obvious reasons. Many of them gave the ultimate sacrifice for everything that we have today.
Exactly.
And that should never be forgotten. And that's why we're always honored at Chestnut Square to be able to do things for veterans during May, which is again Military Appreciation Month.
Right. Just finding all of that. We also had a Red Cross exhibit of nurses' things, and I believe you brought things in for that exhibit as well from your own Homefront exhibit that you have. We do want to know, we want to obviously learn as much as we can about the history, and we want to honor those who served, especially in McKinney, because we're all about McKinney history. So when we were doing that exhibit, I found a Bible, and I wish that I had brought it, but it was a Bible that one of the Killian, I believe it was from a Killian, a father had written in it.
I remember that one.
Just explaining to him when he was down or when he was feeling low or far away from home, that he could always find home back in the Bible. And he wrote down some passages for his son to kind of lean on, because it must have been very, I mean, and it still is traumatic to leave your home, but especially back during World War I, World War II, where people hadn't left McKinney, and that was their first time to leave McKinney and to go over into, especially in World War II, to go over into the Japanese front or to go into the conflict that was over in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, but then I really can't wrap my head around what they felt, the fear that they may have had, and to be called up, right, to serve your country, to go above and beyond, to keep our freedoms, to like World War II was like to defeat evil, right, and to keep freedoms. And then, but even going back to like the Civil War, that was like a crazy time in our country's history, and where, you were talking about the family that was fighting against each other in the Revolutionary War, and there were definitely more than those families, but then you've got the Civil War, right, where it's brother versus brother. And so to like fight yourself, I mean, kind of, if you think about it, to fight your own people. Right. I can't even wrap my head around that. And then the stuff that Dr. Delaney saw being a Civil War surgeon on the field, and like you had to make like decisions like right there to try to save their lives. And there was no hospital. No. There might have been a tent that you were doing that, or you were right there on the field. Amazing people, and we thank them for doing that, for what they had to do. I listened to an interview of one of McKinney's sons, and his name was Rigel McKinney, and he actually, he was just a very interesting person. He was the grandson of Collin McKinney and J.B. Wilmoth. So J.B. Wilmoth and Collin McKinney were best friends. People might not have known that. But so his mother was a Wilmoth, obviously, because his last name's McKinney, and his father was a McKinney. And so just to hear him speak, and he has a story that he told of when he was 29, World War II was going on. So he was up there in age, and he felt that it was his duty to go serve in World War II. And he did serve in World War II. I think he might have been in the Navy. I'm not sure. He might have been because he served in a plane. Okay. So he was a crew. He wasn't a pilot, but he was a crew member. And back then you had to do 25 missions. Is that what they were called? 25 missions. But he was in an area where they didn't have many crew. So he ended up doing 50. Oh my gosh. And then he was queued up to actually go to Japan and drop a bomb on Japan. But luckily, sadly, Japan surrendered right before his crew left. They were loaded and they were ready to fly to Japan. Yeah, that's like really interesting, and just like a hard time in our history,
Yeah.
right? Because no one really wins in war.
No.
But we do know that those who served like gave the ultimate sacrifice. And I'm really grateful today. I feel like we've got a lot of things in place now, right, for those that served. After, especially, they're involved in conflict, because a lot of them suffer from PTSD.
Yes.
And thankfully, we have come to a time in our history that we recognize that,
Right,
and we
right.
see it. We still have a long ways to go in a lot of ways, but back then, during the wars of the past, it was just you came back to your country, you came back to your home, and you just went to work,
Right.
and that was it.
And you were just supposed to jump back into normal.
Yep, go back
Yeah.
to normal.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how anybody could go back to normal.
No.
Right, and we've seen that throughout history. Like I look at the veterans of Chestnut Square, veterans that I have been honored to have met and talked to, and just what they went through, and then to come back and just try to, everything's normal. I just can't imagine that. It was just a lot.
Right.
And that's why I know we are honored as Chestnut Square to be able to honor those that have served, to not forget the sacrifices that they made, to not forget everything that they've done for our country, for the world, and continue to do for our country and for the world. And it's just a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And
yes.
you know, we talked about it before. We have Bobby's room that does give a nod to the greatest generation, which is the generation that fought during World War II, and that you can come and see. We have, right now in the village, we have a beautiful way of recognizing those who have served from the families that now call McKinney home. And that is our banners. We have
Yes.
military banners that are up and around Chestnut Square that you can come and view, that people have purchased either in memory or in honor of a loved one who has served or is serving. And so you can take a stroll through Chestnut Square, just, you know, silently either remember or thank those that have served McKinney, have served our country, and are continuing to serve our country.
Yeah.
We met with can you remind me of the board's name? Do you remember?
It is the Veteran
Memorial
Service Board.
Okay, which I didn't know existed in McKinney. I'm sorry, I did it. Like, we have so many wonderful things here, right,
Yes.
in town. And we were able to go to one of the board meetings. Be sure to follow them. I'm sure they're on social media. I'm pretty sure they said that.
They're on social media.
And they're the ones that put on the beautiful memorial service for Memorial Day, which is at the end of May, as I'm sure you all know, over at the park.
Yes.
There's a Veterans Park in McKinney, if you didn't know, and it's over by, is it Craig's Ranch?
Yeah, it's by
that
Craig
general
Ranch.
area. Craig Ranch?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't live over there. and I've been over there, and it's a really beautiful park. And
Yes.
they're putting more
There's
names.
a beautiful wall.
They're putting more names on the wall. And during the Memorial Day service, they share stories of McKinney's sons and daughters who have served.
Yes.
And
As well as Collin County.
Thank you. It is Collin County,
yeah,
right?
it's not just McKinney.
Okay.
It is Collin County that served throughout many of the conflicts.
including, I believe they're sharing a story of someone who served during Vietnam, Korea, might even be during the Cold War. And so we don't forget any of the gentlemen and women who served during that time as well. I mean, we just had, you know, we met a veteran not that long ago who served during the Gulf War, and just everything that just has happened. Right? And so we pay homage to those who have given so much to our country.
Right.
And so, you know, I think it's a beautiful thing. And I love that May now is Military Appreciation Month. I think it passed in 1999.
Yeah.
And it became Military
So
Appreciation
it's a whole
Month.
month.
It is a whole
Yeah,
month. It
which
literally
is-
starts
yeah.
on the 1st of May with Loyalty Day, and then it ends with Memorial Day.
Yeah.
And there's like Armed Forces Day, and there's like a day for those who serve on the police, and Children of the Fallen, and of course Mother's Day, because war also involves the home front, those that served. Spouses, there's a Military Spouses Day. Look it up. It's really, really interesting. It's fascinating. VE Day. There's Hometown Heroes Day, which happens to be the name that's on our banner project, as well as you may have been lucky and maybe you signed up your child for the Homefront Heroes program that we had on May 8th of all days, which happens to be VE Day.
Yeah.
And so,
they made their own banners.
Yes. And so, we're going to have more Hometown Heroes events in the future, but it was a perfect time to really focus on a veteran for that. And we focused on Bobby Younger on that one.
So this Hometown Heroes that we just did focused on veterans and soldiers. And then the other Hometown Heroes programs that we're going to do are going to focus on just people from McKinney that were heroes, not necessarily that served in the military, but were heroes just within Chestnut Square, within starting McKinney and serving McKinney. So it's a very good program for children.
Yeah, but I love that you picked Bobby for the military month.
Yes.
And just giving a nod again to all those who served. You're probably wondering what book I have in front of me. I have a book. So you may have noticed from our last podcast that we are at the Collin County History Museum, and they now have like a reference library that you can come and you can look through and be able to use for research, school, whatever. Something that they have here in their research room is the men and women in World War II from Collin County. It's just a fascinating book. This actually was started, I believe it was, so the war ended in 1945. I think it was shortly after that it ended. They reached out to the community, and I've only seen Texas do this. And I admit, I didn't look at, during this time there's only 48 states. I didn't go looking at all 48 states to see if they did anything like this. But the few states I did look at didn't have these books. And they're from all over in Texas. And they reached out to the families in the community because they also realized how important it was. And I know Bess Hurd did something really interesting as well that we'll talk about in a moment. And they reached out, and you could just say what family member or which of your family members served, and you send in a picture and you send in their information, and then they created this book to remember all those that served all at Collin County. And there's like little, really beautiful just words at the beginning from each of the towns that someone would just say something like a dedication to. And then here are just pictures, and you can see who served. It lets you know who was lost, and maybe where they ended up being stationed at.
He's just a baby. Look at him.
They were all
oh my gosh,
so,
they were so young.
They were so young. The majority were very, very young who served. And so this is something that you can come to the Collin County History Museum to see. Maybe you'll even have a family member in here if your family has been in the Collin County area for quite some time. I know also though, what's sad is you can see how thick this book is, right? And all of these pictures, but that's not complete.
No.
And because not everybody sent them in. And it just gives you an idea of how many men and women served from this area. And again, just something you don't ever want to forget, right? No. We never ever want to take for granted what we have thanks to these men and women and even service animals. I don't know if there's any in here, I'm sure not, but I mean, the lengths of those that served, right, should never be forgotten. So I'm really glad we were able to do this. Yeah. We want to thank you for joining us for this May episode of Historified as we looked into Military Appreciation Month. Be sure to follow us on all platforms besides YouTube, because we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. And you can find us on Spotify as well. Be sure to check out our website at chestnutsquare.org for all upcoming events that will also be shown on the social media sites I already just mentioned.
And also, if you have any stories that you would like to share with us, or stories about maybe hometown heroes, that we would love to hear more stories about McKinney families. You can share your stories of hometown heroes and anything that you would like for us to cover on future podcasts. Just please comment down below, and we will be sure to include them in our next podcast or include them on our social media. We love sharing stories from y'all.
So I guess this
We
is
will
us
see
just
you next
signing
month.
off. Bye.
Bye.